It started like any other morning. The sun was coming through the windows. The smell of coffee was in the air, and the soft of the world outside made everything feel normal. I was halfway through my second cup when it happened. A knock, not just a regular knock. It was loud, aggressive, like someone was trying to break the door down. I froze for a second, my heart skipping a beat. It was way too early for visitors, and I wasn't expecting anyone. I stood up slowly, my coffee cup trembling slightly in my hand, and made my way to the door. I peeked through the peephole first, and that's when I saw her. A woman, maybe mid-40s. Blonde hair pulled into a tight bun. Sunglasses, even though it wasn't that sunny. Holding a stack of papers and a handbag that looked expensive but fake. She stood there, tapping her foot, looking absolutely furious. I hesitated. Something about her felt off, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door, just a crack at first. Before I could even say a word, she pushed the door wider with the palm of her hand and said, "I'm here to claim my property. You need to vacate immediately." I blinked at her. Words caught in my throat. "What?" I finally managed. She huffed, rolling her eyes like I was being purposely difficult. She thrust the papers toward me, nearly hitting me in the chest. "I bought this house. It's mine now. You need to leave. Now." I stared at her, stunned. My mouth opened, then closed, like a fish out of water. For a second, I actually thought maybe I was still dreaming. Maybe I had fallen asleep with my coffee. Maybe this wasn't happening. But no, she was real, standing there, tapping her foot, breathing heavily like she had just run a marathon fueled by pure anger. I glanced down at the papers. They looked official at first glance, but something about them felt wrong. The fonts were weird. Some lines were even crossed out by hand. And my name wasn't anywhere. "Ma'am," I said as calmly as I could, "I think you're mistaken. I live here. I bought this house 3 years ago. It's not for sale." She gave me a look that could melt steel. "Mistaken?" she repeated, her voice rising. "I have the papers. I have proof. Don't play games with me. I'm not leaving until you hand me the keys." I glanced around, wondering if anyone else was seeing this, hoping a neighbor would magically appear. Someone, anyone, but the street was quiet. Just me and her. I tried reasoning again. "I own this house. I have the deed. I have all the legal documents. I think maybe you were scammed." The second I said the word scammed, her face turned an even deeper shade of red. Her nostrils flared. Her hands clenched around her papers so tightly I thought she might tear them in half. "Scammed? How dare you? I know what I bought," she snapped. "I worked hard for this house. I made the payment. I have every right to be here." I took a small step back, keeping the door half closed between us. My heart was beating faster now, not from fear exactly, but from that deep, uncomfortable feeling when you realize something is spiraling way out of control and you can't stop it. She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume now. It was sharp, overpowering, like she had bathed in a bottle of roses and rage. "You have 10 minutes to pack your things," she barked. "I'm being generous. I don't have to give you that long. Legally, I could have you arrested right now." I blinked again. Was this real life? I kept my voice steady, though inside, a small panic was starting to build. "No, you really couldn't. I live here legally." "You're mistaken." She waved the papers again, shaking them in my face. This sale was private, secret. I was lucky to find it before it went public. I have connections, you know. I know people. I stared at her, trying to understand what kind of world she was living in, who had convinced her of this. And why was she so absolutely sure she was right? For a moment, a strange thought crossed my mind. Maybe she wasn't scammed. Maybe she just decided she wanted my house and thought if she acted crazy enough, she could bully me into leaving. I shook the thought away. Either way, it didn't matter. She wasn't going to win. Still, my hands were sweating now. My phone was in my pocket, and I considered calling the police. But something told me it was better to stay calm, to try and talk her down first. "Look," I said, Keeping my tone even, why don't we call the real estate office together? Maybe they can explain what's going on. She crossed her arms, her lips twisting into a bitter smile. Oh, you're scared now, huh? Trying to weasel your way out? Typical. No, I said quietly. I just want to clear this up. She smirked, like she thought she had won something. Like my willingness to involve a third party was proof that she was right. I swallowed hard, forcing down the lump of anger rising in my throat. I didn't deserve this. I didn't do anything wrong. This was my home. And now, somehow, I was standing here in my own doorway, being told to get out by a complete stranger waving fake papers. The worst part? A tiny, irrational voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What if this somehow turns ugly?" I pushed that thought away, too. Instead, I pulled my phone out, hand steady even though inside I was a mess of nerves, and started dialing. She watched me, arms crossed tightly over her chest, one eyebrow raised as if daring me to make the next move. My heart thudded in my ears. Every second felt stretched, like the world had slowed down. The dial tone buzzed loud against the silence. Finally, someone answered. "Hello, this is Mark from Century Realty. How can I help you?" I turned slightly away from her, speaking into the phone. "Hi, this is your name. There's a woman here claiming she bought my house. She's demanding I leave. Can you check your records, please?" There was a pause on the other end. Then Mark said, confusion heavy in his voice, "Sir, your house isn't listed for sale. It never was." I closed my eyes for a brief second, feeling a rush of relief, but also a deeper sinking feeling, because the woman, Karen, wasn't backing down. If anything, when she saw me talk on the phone, she grew even more furious. She started yelling now, her voice shrill and cutting through the quiet morning air. "Don't listen to him. They're lying to you. This whole town is corrupt. I have the real documents." I opened my eyes again, locking my gaze with hers. And I realized, no matter what I said, no matter what proof I showed her, she wasn't going to listen, not because she was confused, not because she had been tricked, but because she wanted to believe she was right. And nothing in the world was going to change her mind. She jabbed her finger at me, the stack of crumpled papers shaking in her hand. Her voice rose higher and higher, words tumbling out in a rush of anger. "You're just a squatter. You think you can stay here and steal what's mine? I paid good money for this house." I stared at her, stunned by how quickly everything was falling apart. My fingers tightened around my phone. Mark was still on the line, asking if I needed him to send someone over, but I couldn't even process what to say. My brain was still trying to catch up to the madness happening right in front of me. Karen took a step closer, forcing me to step back inside my own house. She tried to wedge her foot between the door and the frame, like she was daring me to slam it shut. My heart pounded so loud I could hear it in my ears. It was my home, my space, and somehow she was invading it like she had every right. "You need to leave. Now!" She barked again, her tone dripping with authority she didn't have. I shook my head slowly. "No," I said, my voice firmer this time. "I'm not going anywhere. You have no legal right to be here." Her face twisted in pure rage. For a moment, she just stood there, her chest heaving, her fists clenched. I thought maybe, just maybe, she would realize how ridiculous this all was. Maybe she would walk away. But instead, she pulled out her phone. "If you won't leave," she said, her lips curled in a nasty smile, "then I'll call the police. I'll have you removed for trespassing." I actually laughed, a short, bitter sound that slipped out before I could stop it. She was really serious. She genuinely believed she could call the police and get me thrown out of my own house. "Go ahead," I said, motioning toward her phone. "Call them." Her fingers fumbled for a moment. Then she dialed, pressing the phone tight against her ear. She turned slightly, pacing in a small, angry circle on my porch while she spoke to the dispatcher. I couldn't hear everything she said, but the words squatter, illegal occupant, and urgent floated back to me. I closed my eyes for a second, trying to breathe through the frustration boiling up inside me. I wasn't worried exactly. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. But there's something about having a stranger accuse you loudly, publicly, that makes you feel exposed, vulnerable, and already curious faces were starting to peek out from windows down the street. One neighbor actually stepped onto their lawn, pretending to check their mailbox while clearly watching the scene unfold. Great, just great. Karen hung up and turned back to me, looking smug. They're on their way. Hope you're ready to be dragged out. I didn't answer. I didn't trust myself to stay calm if I did. Instead, I called my lawyer, Mr. Davis, a calm, patient man who had handled my home purchase years ago. His voice was steady even as I quickly explained what was happening. "Stay inside," he said firmly. "Don't engage with her. Wait for the police. I'm on my way." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Just hearing his voice, hearing someone I trusted tell me it would be okay, gave me a tiny sliver of peace. Meanwhile, Karen wasn't letting up. She started taking photos of the house, of me standing inside the doorway. She narrated loudly to herself, describing the criminal activity she was documenting. I couldn't believe it. It felt like some nightmare you read about on the internet, not something that actually happens to real people. Yet here I was living it. Neighbors had gathered now, pretending to water plants, walking dogs they didn't usually walk at this hour. Whispers floated across the air. I caught bits and pieces. Is he really squatting? I thought he owned that place. She looked serious. The worst part was knowing that even though I was in the right, people would remember the drama more than the truth. They would remember the shouting, the accusations, not the quiet facts. I stayed behind the door, arms crossed tightly over my chest, while Karen prowled back and forth like a cat waiting to pounce. Every now and then, she shot me a triumphant look, as if she had already won. Minutes stretched painfully. My coffee sat cold and forgotten on the table behind me. The whole house felt different now, tainted by this bizarre invasion. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Karen practically jumped in excitement. She waved her arms as a patrol car pulled up, flagging them down like she was a hero in this story. 2 officers stepped out, their faces calm but cautious. "Officer," she called, rushing toward them. "Thank goodness you're here. This man is trespassing in my house. I need him removed immediately." The officers exchanged a quick look. One of them approached her, gently taking the stack of papers she shoved at him. The other came toward me. I kept my hands where he could see them, heart hammering. "Hi," I said, my voice hoarse. "I live here. I have the deed, the mortgage papers, everything. I called my lawyer. He's on his way." The officer nodded, glancing around the porch at the neighbors, at Karen still waving her arms wildly. He looked tired, like he had seen too many situations like this before. "Mind if I see some ID?" he asked. "Of course," I said quickly, fishing my wallet from my pocket and handing over my license. I knew it still had this address on it. I had updated everything after moving in. One small mercy. He studied it for a moment, then gave a small nod. "Thanks." Meanwhile, the other officer was flipping through Karen's papers, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. After a few minutes, he lowered them and said something to her, too quiet for me to hear. Karen's face twisted again, confusion flashing for the first time. She snatched the papers back and pointed at me furiously. "He's lying. He's the criminal. He's stealing my property." The officer shook his head slowly. He looked tired, too. Tired of the shouting, tired of nonsense. He gestured for both of us to calm down. "Let's all take a breath," he said. "We're going to figure this out properly." Karen wasn't having it. She kept ranting, pulling out her phone, scrolling madly through messages, emails, anything she thought would back up her claim. But the longer it went on, the more desperate she looked. And I stood there, watching, waiting, feeling a strange mix of anger, pity, and exhaustion swirl inside me. Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't over yet. Karen was talking faster now, her voice high and sharp, throwing out names of supposed real estate agents, lawyers, people she swore had promised her this house. She scrolled frantically through her phone, shoving it toward the officer like it was some kind of magic proof. Her desperation was pouring out of her, staining the air. It made my stomach twist uncomfortably. The officer handling her tried to stay calm, asking gentle questions, but it was like trying to hold back a tidal wave. She wasn't listening. She wasn't even hearing the words anymore. She was too deep in whatever story she had convinced herself was true. The other officer stayed near me, his eyes darting between us, one hand resting near his radio. I could feel the tension tightening in the space between us, like a rope pulled taut, ready to snap with the slightest tug. Then my lawyer pulled up, his old silver sedan crunching into the driveway. Mr. Davis got out quickly, his briefcase swinging by his side, his face set in a grim line. He gave me a quick nod before approaching the officers. Karen spotted him too, and before he could even introduce himself, she rounded on him. "You!" she shrieked. "You're part of the scam, aren't you? All of you, working together to steal what's mine." Mr. Davis didn't even flinch. He just opened his case, pulled out a thick folder, and handed it to the officer nearest to him. "Here's the original deed, mortgage agreements, tax records, and a copy of the title insurance," he said calmly. "All legally filed and up to date. My client has been the sole owner for 3 years. The officer flipped through the documents quickly, his expression softening as he read. You could almost feel the shift in the air, the weight of truth settling into the cracks. Karen saw it too. Her face paled, then flushed a furious red. "No!" she shouted, stamping her foot like a child denied a toy. "That's fake. All of it. I have the real contract. I transferred the money. I was promised." She stopped suddenly, her eyes darting around like she realized she had said too much, like she had realized too late that she was crumbling in front of everyone. One of the officers, the one with my ID still in hand, spoke gently but firmly. "Ma'am, nothing you provided is official. These papers aren't notarized. They don't have any legal standing, and the signatures don't match county records." Karen opened her mouth to argue again, but the words seemed to get stuck in her throat. "And," the officer continued, "this gentleman's information checks out. His ID matches the deed. His attorney has produced valid documents. Unless you can provide something more concrete, you're trespassing." The word hung there. Heavy. Final. Trespassing. Karen shook her head violently. No, you don't understand. They told me it was a secret sale. Off the books. Special deal." Her voice cracked on the last word, and for the first time, her bravado seemed to crack too. Mr. Davis, standing calm and composed, spoke in a low voice. "If you were promised a secret deal, it sounds like you were defrauded, ma'am. But that has nothing to do with my client. You need to take this up with whoever scammed you." Karen stared at him, breathing hard, as if trying to find a way to argue. But the fight was draining out of her. I could see it. Everyone could see it. One of the officers stepped forward. "Ma'am, you need to leave the property immediately. If you refuse, we'll have no choice but to arrest you for trespassing." There it was, the final blow. For a long, painful moment, she didn't move. She just stood there, trembling, her face a twisted mess of fury, fear, and humiliation. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely, refusing to show weakness. Slowly, she backed away from the door, her shoulders hunched, her hand still clutching her phone like it could save her somehow. She glared at me one last time, a look so full of hate it made me shiver. "This isn't over," she muttered under her breath. "You'll see." Then she turned and stomped down the porch steps, her heels clacking angrily against the wood. The officers followed her to the sidewalk, making sure she actually left. One of them stayed a little longer, taking a full statement from me and Mr. Davis. They promised to file an incident report and advised me to install a camera system if I hadn't already, just in case she decided to come back. As they spoke, I glanced around the neighborhood. People were still watching, peeking through curtains, lingering at their mailboxes. I wondered what stories they would tell about today. The crazy woman who tried to steal a house. The quiet guy who suddenly had the cops on his lawn. The confusion, the shouting, the drama. None of them knew the whole story. None of them ever would. After the police finally left, Mr. Davis patted me on the shoulder. "You handled that well," he said. "Better than most would have." I gave him a weak smile. My hands were still shaking. Inside, the house felt strange. It should have felt safe, familiar, but it didn't. Not yet. The echoes of her shouting still seemed to hang in the air, clinging to the walls like smoke after a fire. I closed the door slowly, locking it behind me. Then I leaned against it, pressing my forehead to cool wood, letting out a long, shaky breath. It was over. At least, I hoped it was. The house felt different now. Every creak of the floor, every hum of the refrigerator seemed louder somehow, sharper, like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. I moved through the room slowly, touching familiar things. The corner of the couch where I always sat, the photos on a hallway wall, the chipped coffee table I had meant to fix for months. Everything was the same, but it didn't feel the same. I kept replaying it all in my head. Her face, her voice, the way she had shouted, demanded, accused, the way the neighbors had stared, the way the officers had finally told her to leave. The lock clicked as I turned it again, even though I had already locked the door. I couldn't help it. Some deep part of me didn't feel safe anymore. Not really. I thought about what the officer had said before he left, about installing cameras, about documenting everything. Part of me bristled at the idea. It was my home, my private space, but another part of me knew it was necessary now. Necessary because there are people in the world who will walk right into your life, your home, and try to rip it away from you like it's nothing. Hours passed, but sleep wouldn't come. I sat on the couch, the TV flickering in front of me, sound turned low. Some late-night show playing jokes I couldn't laugh at. My mind was stuck, spinning over the same thought again and again. What if she came back? What if next time she wasn't alone? What if she found some way to really challenge my ownership, tie me up in legal battles, drain my savings? I hated that she had planted that fear inside me, that even after she was gone, she was still here, lurking like a shadow in the corners of my mind. Around 3 a.m, I finally gave up pretending to relax. I opened my laptop and started researching home security systems. Cameras, door sensors, alarms, things I never thought I'd need, things I never wanted to think about. But now, every click of the mouse felt like taking back a tiny piece of control. By sunrise, I had ordered a full system. Cameras for the front porch, the backyard, the driveway, motion sensors for every door and window, an app that would alert me the second anyone even came near the house. It wasn't much. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was something. The next few days passed in a weird blur. No sign of Karen. No angry phone calls. No pounding on the door. Just an eerie quiet that made me feel even more on edge. I kept checking the cameras once they arrived, watching for any sign of movement. Every delivery truck, every passing jogger made my heart leap into my throat. At work, I found it hard to concentrate. I kept thinking about my house, sitting there, empty during the day, vulnerable. Even though I knew rationally that everything should be fine, fear doesn't care much about logic. Fear just grows. It was about a week later when I got the letter. It was tucked into my mailbox between a pile of junk flyers and a water bill. No return address. No name. Just my name scribbled across the envelope in shaky handwriting. For a long moment, I just stared at it, heart thudding painfully against my ribs. I carried it inside carefully, like it might explode in my hands. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at it, my fingers trembling. Then I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No greeting. No signature. Just a few sentences written in jagged, furious script. You stole my home. You will regret this. Watch your back. The words bled across the page, angry and broken. I sat there, reading it over and over, the room spinning around me. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. She wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I called the police immediately. An officer came out, took the letter, filed a report. They promised to increase patrols in the neighborhood, to keep an eye out. But there wasn't much else they could do unless she actually showed up again. Days turned into weeks. The cameras caught nothing unusual. No Karen lurking in the bushes. No strange cars parked out front. just a regular pulse of the neighborhood. Kids on bikes, people walking dogs, sprinklers ticking across brown lawns. Life tried to go back to normal. I tried to go back to normal. But some nights, when the wind howled against the windows, I would wake up in the dark, heart racing, certain that I heard footsteps outside, certain that at any moment she might come back. And maybe she never would. Maybe the letter was her last desperate gasp. Maybe she would find someone else to blame, another target for her anger. But maybe not. Maybe some people, once they decide the world owes them something, never really let go. And all you can do is lock your doors, watch your cameras, and hope that your quiet, ordinary life doesn't catch the attention of someone who thinks they can take it away from you. Because once it does, nothing ever feels truly safe again.